Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Mabry Project. This episode is with Aaron Jennings. I found out about Aaron when I was in college. He was starting Jennings Apiaries along with his wife Lauren, and I didn't know him, never met him. I got to do a project on his company that he was just starting, and that's how I initially found out about his name. But I had never met him until just the other day when we did this podcast. So. It was really cool to finally put a face with a name and get to know each other a little bit better. Aaron is a beekeeper, and like I said, he and Lauren started Jennings Apiaries, and they've really grown it into putting it into multiple stores and making other products out of what they use or what they gain from the bees, I guess I should say. And but he's also a massage therapist and body worker, and we get into how he pursued that passion and what kicked him off for that. We kind of bounce around about a bunch of different things, but we talk about Aaron had a phase where he was studying Buddhism and really became a hardcore Buddhist. Found that really interesting, and we even got into more Christianity as his, I guess, passion and curiosity for religion has continued to grow, and he continues to explore, while we're all here. Yeah, I've really enjoyed sitting down and doing this with Aaron. We had a lot of fun, and genuinely curious about his life. I think that was really what we determined after the end, and I think he's got a lot more to say, and I really hope that we'll get him back on. So, yeah. This is an ad-free podcast. If you feel like supporting me financially, I do have a Patreon page, and I'm always selling these stickers that I have. My Venmo is always open, but easiest way to contact me is via Instagram at dan.mabry. Check out Jennings Apiaries on Instagram. Check out Jennings Bodyworker if you're looking to get a massage and better your life. So really appreciate all the love I've gotten so far doing this, and look forward to doing more. So appreciate everyone, and enjoy the podcast. Oh yeah, one more thing. Enjoy this new intro by Mr. Biggleton himself. I'll link it below. Yeah.
Is there like a intended audience that you're going for, or no?
No. I mean,
Okay.
This is, are you familiar with Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
And stuff. So, I mean, I just want to have an honest conversation with interesting people and, learn something new every time. And
Cool.
That's all I'm looking for is to just have a conversation with somebody that I never really have.
Okay, cool.
So we'll just jump right into it then.
Sweet.
Aaron Jennings. So Aaron and I have a really odd connection that goes back way longer than I think he realizes. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was in college. I was taking marketing classes, and we get group projects to take on a company or a small business in the area and try to figure out how to promote them more and all that kind of stuff. And this girl named Sarah Lorio, shouts out to Sarah Lorio, was in my group. She did a lot of the work, and but she found you guys, I guess, and reached out to y'all. You recall what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
At all?
Well, so we've had a couple of times where like some interior design students have done some stuff, marketing. So remind me, is this one where we went and talked to the mayor?
No.
Okay, that one was funny.
No, this was like a project. We were basically y'all hadn't had a website or anything yet.
Oh,
this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I've been out of college for 5 years, so this was like 2012, 2013 ish.
Very
it was
fresh.
before like the bee care and all that stuff. So that was just weird because we ended up taking that information and using it for another project a couple years later. But Yeah, that was. I don't remember. Oh, okay. we definitely got a B.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. So, but yeah, that was whenever I was first introduced to Jennings Apiaries and like what local beekeeping really is and can be, and like the different products that y'all are thinking about doing and now do.
Right.
And it was cool to me to see y'all and to see the products that y'all are wanting to do, but had not done yet.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'm like screaming from the rooftops, like, make an Instagram, like put it together, right. Like just put your name out there. Yeah. And but I
am not the best at.
Well, and that's the more that I think about it, the more I talk to people, I realize that not everyone thinks in that manner.
Yeah.
And you're probably more concerned about the bees than you were about.
I was like the business side of it was a byproduct of the passion for keeping bees.
Yeah.
So I needed to find a way to make bees pay me.
Yeah.
And so the way to do that was to sell honey and everything, which initially I got into bees for beeswax. That was because I'm a massage therapist as well.
Gotcha.
And so I was wanting to make lotions and everything at the time, and most of them called for beeswax. So I don't think I'd ever actually had real honey until I started keeping my own bees. And so that kind of led to, okay, now I have to sell all this honey, or I have to do something with it. And I couldn't eat it all, so I ended up doing the business side.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's always been bees first, and then everything else has been secondary, which is not the best way to run a business, for sure. It's just how I'm kind of wired, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. So I assume you just started off like super small?
Yeah, I got one beehive. I was living off-grid in an RV on my uncle's, 40 acres of undeveloped land.
Okay.
No running water. I had a little solar thing from Harbor Freight that was powering a little fan in there.
Wow.
And I thought it would be, we were growing
was that here in Louisiana?
Yeah, it's down Jackson Parish.
Okay.
So we were doing onions and squash, and we were going and buying tomatoes from hot houses and flipping tomatoes. So I was getting into, doing produce and things like that. And so I thought bees would be good. It would provide wax that I could use for the massage stuff. And then, I was looking more at pollination. I was interested in that.
Okay.
And I had done
to help your harvest. And
yeah. And I had done, and it seemed like you could just get a box of bees and then you go get them, you go get honey out of them. That's it. Simple, easy. We can do that. And I had done a yoga retreat in Mississippi, a Kundalini yoga retreat, and my roommate was a beekeeper in New Orleans. He still is, Jay Martin down in New Orleans. And he was talking about it, and everybody was like, wow. Everybody wanted to know about it and everything. It was just super interesting, and he was talking about it, so that put a little seed in there. And then bees go on sale typically in December, January for the coming spring.
Gotcha.
And somehow I saw a post on Facebook or something, and so I bought my first hive of bees, having never actually kept bees, been around bees, or anything like that. So
that's cool.
So yeah, it started with one. I started helping this elderly guy in Eris, Louisiana, keep bees, and learned a lot from him. Some of it was stuff I didn't want to do, kind of thing.
Fair enough.
But we went out to his bee yard, and he made me go open up all the bees, and it was 30 beehives. And the bees were just all in the air. This is the first time I've ever been around bees. So I'm in a bee suit. It's 7 a.m. because you got to do everything super early.
Gotcha.
And all these bees are around, and I got super nervous. But at the same time, it was really just, the whole thing was really cool.
Yeah.
And the more we messed with them, the more I was like, oh man, bees are dope.
Yeah.
Bees are super cool.
Yeah.
And that kind of one hive turned into 5 hives, turned into 20, turned into 100, and the most I've run is right at 200.
So when was this? When did you start?
2012.
Okay.
I mean, so you were catching me.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't have anything, is I was like, I don't know. I didn't even have labels. I wasn't even labeling anything.
Yeah.
My first labels were I was tying stuff around with yarn. So
That's cool though. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to start somewhere.
yeah, definitely.
So, and you mentioned like you were kind of starting it for the beeswax and your lotion. Is that something that you had made before, or you were just looking to like make in house and like just keep it more organic, or what?
Yeah. So I've been a massage therapist since 2006, and a lot of I've worked in physical therapy clinics, but I've also worked in hot springs, like in the bathhouses and the spas and everything. And so I've been in that environment too. And a lot of the stuff that they use is full of all kinds of fun chemicals that you can't pronounce.
Right.
And I'm kind of a nut about that. So I was like, okay, I want to make something. I think we can make something really simple. And then also I studied traditional Thai medicine. So like I do Thai massage, and in that you learn a lot about herbs, and you learn a lot about balms and making stuff like that.
Okay.
And beeswax is really good for the skin. So it just made sense. But at first I was just going to make the balm. And then I started doing all this research on beeswax, and I found out, well, shit, all these beekeepers, they're using all these crazy chemicals too on their own bees to control diseases and pests. And in the beekeeping world, it's like a big division between like, do you use treatments? Do you not use treatments? And so there's this big divide, and I couldn't find any beekeepers locally that did not use some of the specific chemicals that I did not want to have in my beeswax.
Do you know what chemicals we're looking for?
Yeah. So like most of the chemicals are for controlling. There's a mite that the bees have called varroa, and the varroa mite is kind of like a tick, and it gets on them. It gets in between the plates of their exoskeleton, and it gets down in there, and it creates a little wound. And it's not the mite so much as the diseases that end up getting into the bee from the mite. So there's different viruses, things like that. But Apigard is like one of the big ones. Let's see. They also use Terra Myosin, which is a antibiotic, which now you have to have a veterinarian prescription for. But when I started keeping bees, people were dumping it in like sugar. They were just like... And so the more I found out about that, the more I was like, bees should be able to do all this. They should be able to live without all these inputs. I don't know how far you want to get down that train.
No, I
but
mean,
like,
you bring up a good point. And that's kind of where my mind's going. Is like, were you trying to stay away from those chemicals to benefit the bees, or were you doing it more so to keep it out of the honey?
Yeah, so my first thing was beeswax.
Yeah.
You know, once I actually started to get to like fall in love with bees, then it was more, you know, I think there's a couple of different approaches here. There's the medicate them to get rid of the diseases approach. And then there's the let them get exposed to diseases. The ones that don't make it don't reproduce. And over time, you should develop a hardier bee to those diseases. There's always like new stuff. The beekeeping industry has a lot of migratory practices, so sometimes people are spreading diseases all around the country.
Right. Yeah.
My approach, to me, it made more sense from a cost standpoint, a time standpoint, because if you buy all these chemicals, then you have to apply the chemicals. You have to put the chemicals into the hive, and if you have 100 beehives, even if it only takes you 5 minutes, you know, that adds up to quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
And you got to pay for them. And I was thinking, well, don't bees live in trees and stuff, and nobody's putting chemicals in them, so why would we put this stuff in there? It's always more complicated than like the media will make it seem. I mean, a lot of the big beekeepers who use a lot of these chemicals, they have overhead, they have employees, they have contracts, they have obligations that from a business standpoint they have to meet.
Yeah.
And so just like most commercial agricultural, they'll make they'll cut some corners. They'll do what they have to get it done right now.
Right.
Whereas with me, I've never been like competing on the price. I mean, most people know that about our honey. It's something I've had many discussions about. Our products tend to be on the high end.
I was about to say, I imagine you have had plenty of people complain about that.
Yeah, and you know, and I'll have people say, hey, look, I can get the same amount of honey at Walmart for $3. And I'll say, go.
Yeah.
Walmart's that away. It'll get you there. But I would challenge anybody to taste that honey next to our honey, and you'll see that most honey sold in the grocery stores has a lot of adulteration to it. It's been cut. It's just like drugs. They cut it with high fructose corn syrup so that they can make more money out of less product,
right?
Kind of deal. And so you end up, because honey is a commodity, and honey is you only make so much of it a year. You can either sell it for cheap and make your money on volume, or you can sell it for high and make your money on quality.
Right.
And that's what we've always kind of went with. That's why it's like we only use glass. I get fancy labels. I take the time to put that effort into it, because I think I don't want to be the biggest beekeeper in the world or the biggest honey business in the world. I want to provide the best honey possible for like Ruston, Monroe, maybe Shreveport, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's more of a high-end kind of product.
Right.
And so that's the way that one of the reasons I do that is because I can only make so much a year, and I have to make so much money out of that. So it's a total supply and demand kind of situation.
So my mind goes to supply and demand as well, but you have a good length amount of time to work with your supply as far as it keeping and lasting.
Yeah, it'll last longer than us.
Right.
The famous thing that a lot of people have heard, they found honey in King Tut's tomb that was still edible. I wouldn't eat that, but mostly because of curses and stuff. But but the honey would be fine.
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
Yeah.
So that's one of the benefits that over produce, for example, as far as an agricultural product goes.
Yeah.
To me, I think honey is the perfect agricultural product. You have an infinite shelf life as long as it's stored properly. Even people who don't like honey will recognize that there are benefits to honey, and they'll buy it. Unlike meat, you can freeze it and make it last a longer time or whatever, but you have a lot of regulation to go through if you deal with meat. Honey is very unregulated, which is a good and a bad thing. It creates a lower barrier to entry, so it's easier to get into the market, which also means it's easier for competition to come into the market. But because it's not regulated very well, it's also easy to have impure products.
Do you see that a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
because whenever you say that's unregulated, my mind goes to peanut butter.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the whole peanut butter thing, in the 70s or something.
No.
There was a big rule about.
I'm not that old.
Fair enough. I heard it on a podcast or something, but it was about peanut butter was super unregulated, and so they were cutting it and putting other things in it, and finally somebody was it went to Congress, and Congress had to make a rule about it had to be 90% made of peanuts or something. It's just
so
ridiculous.
with honey to be called honey, it only has to be 51% honey. But it's still really hard to tell. I mean, you would have to. Not a lot of people are going around and testing the honey.
Right.
There's not a huge demand. It's a low risk food, so there's just not a lot of oversight on it. So
what does it usually cut with? I guess.
Corn syrup.
Yeah.
If it's coming out of Asia, rice syrup. Some people will cut it with a simple syrup out of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will feed the bees high fructose corn syrup, which the bees will put up like it was nectar from a flower. And then they'll just extract that and call that honey. And I guess it's passed through the bee. Maybe it's honey. But to me, to be honey, it has to be flower nectar.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things, William Blake is a 16th century English poet. And he has this one poem where he's talking about how honey is the essence and the spirit of the land that it's from, because they go and they're collecting nectar from millions of flowers. They're bringing all that in, they're condensing it down, they're evaporating out as much of the moisture as possible, and they produce honey.
Yeah.
And so it is, and it's hyper local. You know, each beehive, the bees are only flying up to 4 to 5 miles, usually within a 2-mile radius. So you're getting a very hyper localized distillation of like the local flowers and everything.
Right.
Which is where, to me, it's like, man, this is like magic.
Yeah.
This is super cool.
So I guess you have to be pretty strategic about where you place the hives.
Yeah, that helps. And it all goes to how much you want to actually produce, you know, and the beekeeping, like most agriculture, there's a lot of different ways of managing the hives, and depending on what you're trying to get from them and the balance between what's good for the bees and what's good for the beekeeper tells you a lot about how you want to manage those, you know. And some people are pushing them hard, getting as much honey from them as possible, feeding them back sugar. We try to, for our bees, we try to leave them as much honey as we think they'll need. Sometimes I guess that right, sometimes I guess that wrong. I always feel bad whenever I go to a hive and they starved, because that was my bad. That was my fault, kind of thing.
So, like, they died?
Yeah, they starved to death.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, bees, especially in the wintertime, bees don't hibernate. They cluster together, kind of like the penguins in Antarctica, you know, and they do this, like, rotational thing where you get hot in the middle and you move to the outside, then you come in and you move to the outside. And they're constantly doing that. And that's what they want the honey for. So, believe it or not, they don't just make it for us. Like, they actually have a use for it themselves.
But they overproduce?
Through management.
Okay.
Through that's where the beekeeper comes in.
I was about to, that I guess my question is, like, what do you introduce to the hive, or, you know?
Space.
Okay.
So what I create is space. So we use a few different types of hives. There's the typical, like, stacked boxes that most people are aware of. That's a Langstroth hive. That's the most normal, conventional, commercial type of setup. Okay. And it's got its benefits and everything. We actually tend to use fixed volume hives. So we use hives that we don't add boxes to or take boxes away from. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Mostly I think it's better for the bees, and it's better on my back. I don't have to carry, you know, a box of honey will weigh 60 to 80 pounds. So you get,
makes sense.
That's why that old guy had me helping him keep bees, because like he was 88 and he was like, go get that one, go get that one, go get that one. So it's good for my back, but it also, I think that if you think about the hive as like the body, and the combs on the inside are like the skeleton, the bees are like the muscles moving everything around. And so every time you open that up, it's like opening up a body, and you're throwing off. They have a very specific, like, humidity and temperature and airflow that they maintain in there. It's like really impressive, the engineering that goes into it. And so by putting boxes on, taking boxes off, putting boxes on, you're constantly adjusting that volume, which you can coerce them to make more honey that way. But what I like to do is I'll let them fill up the space, and then I'll take out some honey, and I'll put empty frames in, let them fill that back up, and I keep doing that. Instead of, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take, like, at the beginning of spring, they'll go put 2 or 3 boxes, empty boxes on it. They'll let them fill it up, and at the end of the flow, which is when all the flowers are out and all the nectar's really going, they'll come back and they'll take all of it. Or they'll take, you know, most of it or something like that.
You try to keep it like 1 box or 2 boxes, and you have these frames multiple frames that fit inside of the box.
Right. With us, we use just 1 box. And then so the bees always have the same amount of space.
Gotcha.
They just have different amounts of honey. Yeah. And they don't like empty space, so they'll fill that up with honey if you time it right. And that's where, like, the art of it comes in.
The experience, for sure. So I've seen other hives that, like, have drains in the bottom of them, and you just open it up and let it flow.
The infamous flow hive.
Yeah. What is your opinion on that?
Man, I can't tell. Whenever that thing first started coming out, like when they first started putting that video on Facebook, every day 4 or 5 people would be like, dude, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? So the flow hive, I know a guy that knows the owners, the creators. He actually prototyped it for them. It took them 10 years to develop that.
Wow.
And it was pretty ingenious of them. He and the guy that I know that actually talked to them said, super good, nice guys. They really care about bees. They're really trying to create a way for more people to come into beekeeping and everything. And I think they did. You know, it's for me, it's way too expensive. It's like $600-$700 just for the box to get you in.
Gotcha.
I can build a beehive for about $50.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not like a carpenter. I mean, I can build a beehive for $50. So the cost was like crazy to me.
Yeah.
The other thing is that while it's like pretty ingenious that they have these, if you look at it, it has basically like honeycomb, but it's made out of food grade plastic, and it's split vertically in these little strips. And whenever you turn the crank, the parts go up against each other, and then they open up, and there's a channel that honey goes down into, and then comes out the spout into the jar, whatever you're doing.
Right.
That's really cool. That seems like a lot of moving parts to me, you know, and it's expensive.
AKA shit that could break.
Exactly. And everybody I know that's gotten one, I don't know if I can say everybody, most people that have talked to me about their experiences with them, after a couple years, they've broken.
Yeah.
And then you got to buy replacement parts. And so as a business model, that makes a lot of sense. Like, that seems like a good planned obsolescence kind of deal.
Right.
But to me, it's just overcomplicating something that doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah.
Like, you can keep bees in a flower pot. You know, you can keep bees super simple, super low cost, and you get to see the process to me more. A lot of people, they get those flow hives and then they think, oh, I don't have to like maintain the bees or keep up with the bees or anything like that. And that's like one of the arguments that beekeepers have, is it makes lazy beekeepers, which is probably true, you know. But some people like toys, and I like toys. I get it, you know. And beekeeping, when you start looking into it, it's like a mountain of stuff, and the learning curve is straight up. And it's not until you get like third, fourth year into it that you think that second year you got it all figured out, but it's like that third and fourth year where you really start to figure out that you're never going to figure it out.
Okay.
And that's the cool part to me. It's like constantly a gamble. Right. You know, I never know what's going to happen. Like, I can usually pretty good about something, but I can't always predict how it's going to go.
Yeah. So it's just because of nature and
it's nature. Patterns. Yeah, the weather. You never know what the weather's going to do. Some days, like, the bees are pissed off for no reason. Other days, they're just like your friends. But to me, it's all part of the experience of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess we'll switch it up a little bit. So, how did you get into massage therapy and that type of deal?
Yeah, so I joined the Air Force right out of high school. Okay. I was a senior when September 11th happened. I enlisted on September 13th. Shipped out 2 days after graduating from high school, and became an air traffic controller. And I hated it.
So you got fired up, and then you...
Oh, dude, I was super fired up. The crazy thing is that I had scholarships. I had like college. Everybody knew like I was going to college. I was going to go do some college stuff. I was always did well in academics. That was always a strong suit. I had scholarships and like stipends for some cool universities I was excited about. And then September 11th happened, and I got like pumped. You know, it hit me at the right age, man.
Yeah.
It hit me at the...
It's weird because I was in the third, fourth grade whenever that happened. And it's like, I always hear stories about people like you that were like, you know, were like, hell yeah, let's go after their heads.
Yep.
And that never resonated with me. But like you said, I mean, you were at the right age.
It was totally like the right age. And then whenever I was telling people like, I'm joining the military, everybody kept on saying, you won't do it. You won't do it. I was like, oh man, I'm 17. Tell me I won't.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still like that. Like, that's about the best way to get me to do something. And so I, against my parents' wishes, against like everything, my parents ended up signing so I could do it early and everything, but they were strongly urging me not to.
Yeah.
I had been taking Japanese in high school. I was like conversationally fluent in Japanese.
Wow.
Which was just like a cool opportunity that I got to do that. And so I wanted to be a linguist in the Air Force, and I took the test for linguist school. I did really, really well on it. They were like, sweet, you want to learn Arabic or you want to learn Farsi? And I was like, I kind of already know Japanese. Let's do Japanese. And they were like, it's not World War II. We don't need anybody speaking Japanese.
Yeah.
We need Arabic and Farsi. And you're probably going to be stuck in the desert the whole time. And I was not interested in that either.
Yeah.
So I had scored really well on depth perception. And so air traffic control was open to me. And I knew that air traffic controllers made good money. So I'd seen Pushing 10. And so I was like, that looks cool.
Yeah.
So let's do that. I did not anticipate hating the job as much as I did. And just not enjoying the Air Force. Like, it was just not for me. It was just not like the best fit for me.
That's fair.
Kind of deal. Like first night of basic training, I was, people are like crying and stuff. It's like, oh man, it was like crazy. It was like Full Metal Jacket stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and like you're like crying. You're like, oh man, what did I do? Like everybody I know is like doing their summer vacation. They just graduated high school, and I'm like here in San Antonio, and it's stupid hot. And
Yeah.
So I walked into the office of my drill instructor, and we had a little reporting statement we had to make, and so I got that out finally. And he was basically like, "What the fuck do you want?" And I was like, "Sir, I have made a horrible mistake. I don't think I belong here." And he started laughing. He had this like belly laugh. He was like, "You better get to bed. It's gonna be an early morning." And that, for me, was just like set the tone for my time in the military.
Yeah.
I think it's a great fit for some people. I'm glad I did it. I am super glad I'm done with it though too. And I'm glad I had the experience. I'm glad I did it, but I'm not like all pro military or anything.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So did you stay in the States the whole time?
I did. I was in North Dakota. So
Interesting.
I was in Grand Forks, North Dakota. I was an air traffic controller up there. For fun, we would we weren't that far from Winnipeg, Canada.
Okay.
And so in Canada, you could drink at 18. You could do all kinds of fun stuff at 18.
Yeah.
So we would go up to Canada and kick it
Fair
whenever
enough.
we had free time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never realized there was an Air Force base up there.
There's two. Grand Forks is the nice one. Minot is the one that no one wants to go to, because Grand Forks, there's a town, there's Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. It's right on the Minnesota border, and there's like 60,000 people. So it's like a sizable town.
Yeah, that's fair.
Minot is like, there's like 10,000 people, and you're out in the middle of the plains, and it's just like stupid cold all the time. But so after that, I got out of the Air Force. I moved down to Florida because I had gotten tired of North Dakota. And in Florida, I was a telemarketer, and that sucked. But I lived like less than half a mile from a massage therapy school, and ended up going and talking to them, and that was kind of how I found it. I thought it'd be less stressful than air traffic control.
Yeah.
Which it is. It's a lot less stressful
Yeah,
than air traffic
would
control.
imagine so.
Yeah. So that's how I found massage.
Basically, you can make your own schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, which has its like pros and cons.
Yeah.
you know.
So I guess that was whenever you went to school, you were like, all right, this is what I'm doing.
For
Like-
massage?
Yeah,
yeah.
like you were. I guess you decided your career was going to go that way.
Well, I think mostly it was just I need to get a job,
Yeah.
where I can make some money. I made money doing the telemarketing. I was worked at a company that was like a middleman company for student loans and did like student loan consolidation. And I
Gotcha.
got commission and hourly, and I was single at the time, and you could work as much as you want. So I would work like 60 hours a week and then get commission on top of it. And that's probably some of the best money I've ever made. But the job was like soul sucking.
I was
I was
about to
calling
say,
people on Father's Day. Like people are hollering at you. I mean, you get all kinds of stuff. I'm always nice whenever I call in places. I am always as nice as I can be to these people, because just a little bit of kindness, you're more likely to get what you want out of them.
Yeah.
As soon as you call them and you're like, listen here, I'm tired of y'all, They're like, I didn't do it, man. And you're like the 100th call today that has just been like telling me how much I suck.
Right.
So, nope, not helping you. Sorry,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I try to be super nice to people because they're people. Their job sucks.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I thought massage, they lure you in. They say, you can make $80 an hour. You're like, what? You know, and you can.
Yeah.
You can totally do that. But you're not working 40 hours a week.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't want to work 40 hours. You could, but it would not be a good time.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. And
You would need a massage.
yeah. And most of the time you're not making $80 an hour. Like, especially when you're first getting out, you're just like, it's like a lot of those trade schools, I think, you know. They give you all the promises up front, and then you get out and you're like, what do I do with this now?
Yeah,
You know?
that was my next question. Like, is it like a hairdresser? Like you get into a
Yeah.
building and pay rent and that kind of deal?
All kinds of situations. You can go hourly, salary, commission, work for yourself, partner up with people.
Yeah.
It's very flexible. If you have the discipline to, which I didn't have at first, to work for yourself, you really can. You know, like I think the median income for a massage therapist is something like $36,000 a year. But you can easily, if you're just a little bit good, you can easily do better than that. You know, I think it's very achievable to do like 50, 60, 70 a year. But it's going to take a lot of work on your part.
Right.
You know, and so it's just what you want out of it. You can go work at Massage Envy and make $15 an hour, and they'll work you until you break. Or you can work for yourself and do like 60 an hour and work 2 hours a day if you can, depending on your market, you
Right.
know, however you can find it.
Yeah. So that has, I guess, afforded you to be able to use your time to pursue other avenues.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I was doing massage, and then for almost 4 years, I stopped doing massage and just did the beekeeping full time.
Cool.
Yeah, did that full time.
And was that like a big part of your learning process? Whenever you just strictly did that, or was that?
Oh, like doing just beekeeping?
Yeah, or was that
Yeah.
like you were trying to commit more to it?
I was trying to commit more to it, and I had these ideas that I could, that we could build up a brand, and that we could make. So like selling honey is not hard. Producing honey is the trick. And I had a run of a few years where nature played so well with me, and we were able to make a lot of honey with relatively few amount of hives, and that went really, really well. And then I've had 2 years in a row, and I thought like it'll always be like this. It's just an upward trend kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, oh man, you know, we're gonna make. We're getting into Whole Foods. We're on Amazon. We're like, oh man, we're gonna be rich.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
all the honey money. But then I had a couple of years back to back where it did not, and so that kind of helped me. And I'd been missing Bodywork, but it kind of helped drag me back, like push me back towards Bodywork.
Right.
And then, but what I did learn a lot about in that time was business, which I didn't know before. And I think taking my experiences, mostly lumps from the honeybee business, and applying them to the bodywork business, I have something that's going to be more under my control as much as anything is ever under your control.
Fair enough. I guess that kind of answers a question that I had lingering in my head, and we were talking about, you know, it lasts a long, like honey will stay good for a long time. So you have been in situations where you like ran out of product.
Yeah, this year though, that was like, this has been the first time that's happened to me, because I had such a good bumper crop from 3 years ago that it took me all the way till this year to get rid of it.
I guess that really was my question, is
Yeah.
You're able to carry over some. And
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking about whenever I see you guys in like Super One and stuff like that. Like I see it as a good investment for them because of how long it can sit there,
Yeah.
if it sells or if it doesn't,
Yeah.
or how the speed at which it sells,
Yep.
I guess is a better way to
Yep.
put it.
And they keep up, they track all that kind of stuff. And Super One, At one time we had like a prime location in Super One, and we were selling a lot. It was like we could make a living off of this like store kind of deal. But then they changed management, they changed some of their policies, and they wouldn't let us keep that position, and our sales like bottomed out. So it was like I lost, almost $2,000 a month like that.
Wow.
And I had this idea of like, it's only up, and I hadn't taken into consideration that it can also go back, kind of thing. And so, that was kind of a ooh moment, but it all works out to where, it kind of got me, like I said, I'm back into body work now, still doing bees, but not having to rely on them as heavy.
Okay. I got a question that'll lead into another question. So I know you guys used to be at the farmer's market all the time. You still doing that?
Yep.
And y'all did or still do free, not free, but like refills on your jar if you bring your own jar? Is that something that you see on a regular basis, or is it something that because you say you're seeing all that sales at Super One, like that just makes me think that people aren't doing that and they're not like recycling their jars.
So we have a few people who are like, as soon as I see them coming, it's like their hands are coming out of the bag and they've got like 6 empty jars and they're putting them there, and it's not free. So before anybody hits me up for a free jar of honey, I take $1 off the price.
Okay.
Honestly, to stay with like food safety and all that kind of stuff, and people clean the jars out really good. I have no doubt that it's a super clean jar. I can't reuse it. I tell people like our jars are awesome. They're high quality glass. You've got good lids on them. It's a good little size and everything. Use it for something. Put some spices in it. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But like they're good little jars. We use them as cups at our house, and then like put a lid on it if you got to take it to go, like coffee or something.
Makes sense.
But a lot of times people they bring them back. They feel good about it. I give them $1 off for every jar that they bring back, and then I throw all those jars away because we don't have glass recycling here.
Yeah,
and I can't reuse.
Keep using them as cups.
I can't. And I can't reuse the containers to refill honey. At one time, I was bringing a honey bottling tank up there, and I would literally refill the jar that you brought.
I guess I thought maybe that's what I saw you doing.
Yeah, and I used to do that. It's kind of a pain in the butt to do that. And it ended up being more trouble than it's worth. So I still just give the discount, tell them thank you.
Yeah.
Take the jar. At the end of the day, I throw them all away.
It's tough.
Yeah. But, it's okay. It is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah, for sure.
So,
and hopefully we will start moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Here in the Weston area.
I think out of anything that people recycle, glass is the thing that makes the most sense from an energy cost and everything. Whenever you look at how much it takes to like recycle plastics and how much plastic actually gets recycled, all that kind of stuff. And you get into like
something I was learning about a little bit more today.
Yeah, what really happens with plastic and stuff. It's a nice thought. I don't know how much of it's actually getting done.
Yeah.
Glass, on the other hand, they just melt it down and then they can reform it and re-pour it. And they actually need bits of old glass to make new glass. And so to me, glass is the thing that we should be using glass more than plastic. If you're worried about the earth and everything, like stop using single-use plastics, start using glass bottles and using glass containers, and then I would think like focus more energy on glass recycling, because that's like metal where you can melt it down, you can reuse it.
Yeah, that's something I guess I never fully thought through, but it makes sense. Obviously, you have a lot of tattoos.
I do.
When did you start getting into tattoos? And
whenever I was 11, I saw a TV movie adaptation of Moby Dick.
Okay.
And there's a character in Moby Dick called Queequeg, and he is a Polynesian islander. And in the book, they describe how he's tattooed from like head to toe. And in the movie, the dude was like, it wasn't The Rock, but he was like built like The Rock.
Yeah.
And he was like just covered in all these like badass tattoos and everything. And I immediately found a Sharpie and started drawing on myself. And for the next few years, I would get sent home from school. I'd get in trouble for like constantly drawing on myself, but I knew like as soon as I saw him, I can remember the scene in my head.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw him, it was done. I was like, I want to be covered with tattoos.
Yeah.
Like that is what I want. I want to be covered with them. So at 18, I got up to North Dakota. I was in the Air Force. I reported to work. It was November 1st, 2002, and the first snow had started to happen, and they issue you all this cold weather gear because it gets like -60 up there.
Yeah.
But it was like 28 degrees, and I put everything on because I'd been living in Biloxi. That's where I went to tech school at, was in Biloxi. And then I'm from down here, and I'd never seen snow. And so, like, I put on everything. I had a big fur-lined parka, had the huge gloves on. I got to work, and they just started laughing. They were like, oh, man, you haven't even seen cold yet. And then they were talking to me, and I told my supervisor, I said, I'm going to go get a tattoo. And he was like, okay, but it cannot be below your elbow. So the first tattoo I got was right there. And I went to Magoos Tattoos, which was a tattoo shop in between the base and Grand Forks. And I'm old enough to have seen all the reruns of like Mr. Magoo.
Okay.
You know, so he's blind, he can't see. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
That.
Mr. Magoo's Tattoos.
But so I got into Magoos Tattoos, and it was a barn down a dirt road, and it was a biker tattoo shop. And these were like Aryan Nation, all out of prison, like tough cats, tons of tattoos. I was like super white, skinny, 18, bald, no facial hair. People called me Powder. And I walked up in this place and was like, I want to get my first tattoo, you know, and they kind of had a chuckle and stuff. And it was interesting. I got several tattoos there, and whenever people who have been in prison see some of my tattoos, they can recognize the style. And so I've had people ask me where I've done time.
Yeah.
And I've never been in prison, just because some of the style of it is very like prison-y kind of ink. And that's because the guys that were doing it were like coming out of prison.
Yeah, super old school.
Yeah. And so, and that was in 2002. And so I don't usually go more than 6 months without getting a new one. Sometimes it's longer. Money is the biggest thing. If I had like infinite money, I would be done. I'd have it all finished by now.
So do you have a theme, or is it just something new every time?
No, it tends to be a lot of it's like religious imagery, just because of personal interest out of mine, but it tends to be very much like where I was at the time, what was going on in my life, very symbolic of what, you know, for me, like I don't judge people. Like you get tattoos for whatever reason you want to get them. For me, they usually mark some kind of significant thing in my life or a time that I was in. And I can remember each one. Like I can remember what I was doing that day, what was going on in my life. Like,
so you like that. Events go on and you're like, all right, like this, I'm going to, next one, it's going to be this.
Yep.
All right. That's cool.
And so I've been lucky to where I've befriended a lot of tattoo artists, so I've been able to get some deals.
Yeah, that's my other question. Like, you try to be consistent with the same people, or you bounce around different shops, or?
I like consistency. You know, originally, like at first, it was just like, you got a tattoo machine?
Yeah.
Ink it up, man. Let's do it, kind of thing. And then I was moving around a good bit. So, like, wherever I was, I'd find somebody and tend to, like, latch onto them. When I got back to Ruston, me and Joey Bagwell, we actually went to elementary school together.
That helps.
And I remember him from elementary. He was, like, my best friend at Ruston Elementary because he would, like, keep the other kids from, like, picking on me too bad.
Powder.
Yeah. And so, anyways, so, like... And I saw he had a tattoo shop, and so he's done a lot on me.
Yeah.
I love Joey. He does awesome work. University Ink. I've been to tattoo shops all around the country. University Ink is a top-level tattoo shop. They got some badass artists in there.
I know plenty of people that live in Monroe, West Monroe, and will not get a tattoo in Monroe, West Monroe. We'll drive to Ruston every time.
Yeah.
So I don't have any myself, but not opposed to it.
Yeah.
And obviously University Ink has a really good reputation for sure. So.
Yep. So I tell people, like, it's worth it. You're going to pay the money. People are like, oh man, they told me they was going to charge me $100 for that tattoo. Dude, it's there forever.
Yeah.
Ever. Trust me. Pay $100. Give them a tip. Pay $100 and then give them a tip because it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be there.
Yeah. You mentioned religion. Do you want to discuss that? You know,
Sure.
I know you seem to be very curious about multiple religions.
Yeah.
Maybe what have you explored? What are you exploring now?
So I grew up Baptist-y, I would say. Baptist-ish.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Fair
You know, my dad had been a Baptist preacher in his younger days. He had kind of fallen into some tough times and kind of got away from that. And that was something that I always saw him struggling with was he believed one thing, but he was constantly doing something else. And so,
Gotcha.
you know, reconciling that was like really difficult for him. I knew from an early age, I was really interested in consciousness and just what is consciousness? Like, what is life? What is this thing we're all doing together?
For sure.
You know? And so, and I had an interest in Japan from being a child because I grew up like Nintendo was my jam. And so I got exposed to a lot of Japanese things through video games because my parents were very, just stay in your room. Don't make any noise. We'll be good. So I wasn't monitored, so I got to play whatever I wanted to. And I kind of learned how to read so that I could play because back then you had to read everything in the games. And so I enjoyed reading so that I could play video games.
Yeah.
And got interested in Japan. And so through that kind of got an interest in Buddhism. Whenever my parents got divorced, my dad had always told me, like, no matter what you do, no matter what religion you want to look up or anything, stay away from Buddhism. It is devil stuff.
So you're like, I'm going to Buddhism.
So I immediately, whenever they got divorced, the first order I made on Amazon in like 1998, I've had my Amazon account since 1998. The first order I made was a book called Buddhism Plain and Simple by Steve Hagen. And I read that book and was like mind blown. Shortly after that, I found Henry David Thoreau and Walden and Civil Disobedience, which like affected me politically, you know, like my political views. And Henry David Thoreau had an interest in Hinduism. And so I ended up kind of pursuing that a little bit and got really interested in meditation because it seemed like it would be a way to experience consciousness differently. And so that sounded interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I had kind of given up on Christianity having any answers for me because I had grown up and it was like, so we're in Sunday school, they're talking about Noah's Ark, and I'm like, you mean to tell me they built a boat big enough to put all them animals on it and all the food that they need and everything that they need for 40 days. And then it rained for 40 days and I just wasn't buying it.
Yeah.
And people would like shut me down. And I always felt like they didn't know either. And so I never had a problem with Jesus. Jesus seemed like a really cool guy. But it was like everyone around it, everyone that was involved with Christianity, they were like beating their kids. They were sleeping around.
You're talking about like the people that were like teaching you Christianity.
Yeah. You know, like I would see, you know, kids are super observant because they don't have the blinders. So they just see all of it and they're just like taking it in. And you would just see the hypocrisy, you know, and then I had my own dad who would, his experience was, you know, he would be super angry and violent, but then say that, like, you know, he was a Christian. And so anyways, I started to put these things together and say, okay, I don't want any part of that. Yeah. No thanks. Mm-hmm. I'm out. I saw a movie called Stigmata, and they talk about the Gospel of Thomas in that movie, and through that I ordered a copy of the Gospel of Thomas off of Amazon, and read that and thought, okay, well, this Jesus sounds better than the Jesus I've heard about, you know. And in that, it's like more of an approach that he was a teacher more than a savior. I always had this problem with this whole like savior thing, like save me from what? Like how can you tell me I'm damned just because I was born? Like, that's messed up. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, I kind of started veering off that away and studying more about Buddhism, Zen Buddhism in particular, because it was the Japanese flavor that just kind of found its way to me.
Yeah. Well, again, sounds like it's a way to experience consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, being in the Zen state.
Yep.
That basically what you're
Yeah. And so I ended up, when I was in North Dakota, the guy that wrote the book, Steve Hagen, he lived in St. Paul, and he had a retreat at this, it was a Presbyterian church that they bought and converted into like a Buddhist place.
Yeah.
And so I went and did a retreat there and loved it. And then got, more and more interested in Zen Buddhism. My first experience with podcasts was actually finding Alan Watts on the Psychedelic Salon, which was like a podcast from the early days, like must have been 2006. And where they were talking about psychedelics, and then they were talking about just all kinds of consciousness things, which I just gravitated towards.
For sure.
And so Alan Watts was this guy in the 60s who really, and in the 50s too, who really brought Eastern thought to the West.
Okay.
And so if you ever have a chance, like, check him out. I like just listening to him. But, and so like through him, I found out more about like Hinduism and other things. And I kept a meditation practice going. And then when I started studying traditional Thai medicine and Thai massage, I found out about like Theravada Buddhism, which is it's the Buddhism that's in like Southeast Asia and everything. It's not, I don't know the best way to describe it. Just Google Theravada Buddhism.
Touche.
But and so I went full on with that and did like the equivalent of a baptism or whatever. I took initiation. I got like a Buddhist name, did all that. I was shaving my head and my face, and this is when I was living in Ruston too, so it was a little weird. But so if you ever saw me with a shaved head and face, I was practicing Buddhism. But the whole time I was doing that, my Buddhism teacher, and one of the things I like about Buddhism is the fact that there's this strong teacher-student relationship.
Okay.
And information, it's not just information, it's like experience. It has to be experience. They can tell you about it, but you have to experience these things. And that was so much, that takes away any questions, because like whenever somebody's just telling you because the Bible says so, that's really hard for me to take, But whenever they say, we'll do this, and then if it works, we'll talk.
Yeah.
And then it works and you don't have any questions. You're like, oh, well, shit, that works.
Yeah.
Okay, done.
Yeah.
But my Buddhism teacher kept on telling me, you should find like mysticism exists in Christianity as well. It's not as highly publicized as it is in Asian countries. It's a little bit harder to get into in Christianity. But he was talking about from a cultural standpoint, anybody can be Buddhist. But it's easier to be Buddhist if you're Asian or you've grown up in a culture that is already Buddhist. Because to convert all the way, to like really take it on, you have to, religions aren't just like a book and some doctrines. There's a whole cultural context that comes with that.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to like assimilate all of that. And it just takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy. Whereas I grew up in a Christian culture, and there are the same truths that you find in Buddhism, you can find in Christianity, just talked about in a slightly different way because their perspective's different. But when it comes down to it, like truth with a capital T, doesn't care where you're from, how old you are, who you are, any of that stuff. It's truth. It's like capital T truth. And I think all the major religions have found it in their own way, which is usually structured in a cultural context. And so he kept on telling me, like, there is mysticism in Christianity. You just have to go find it. And it would be a better fit for you. I'm talking about me. He was like, it would be a better fit.
What is mysticism? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that word.
Yeah, so the mystery, like the part of any faith that deals with the true experience that we have as human beings, to me.
The non-physical things, the things that you can't grasp, I guess.
Yeah, and concepts that it's experientially based, as opposed to just like you read whatever. You read the Bible, the Quran, whatever you're into. You read it, and then you just say, okay, well, they said it. They got it all figured out. I just eat it, keep going. Which you see in Buddhism as well. Like, I thought I had this romantic idea that like all Buddhists were like enlightened and they have it all figured out, and Christians are just like, you know, dumb, stubborn Western people. But it's not really like that. I mean, there's Buddhist people that are Buddhist because that's just what you are. Everybody goes to temple on whatever day. Just like some people, like, they just go to church. It's part of the social thing. And if you don't do it, then you're like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
But I would say that the mystical, to me, it gets down to like the real questions. Like, for me, it does not matter to me. And this was something me and my dad argued about. Basically, I was asking him one day when I was like full Buddhist, I was like, why do you believe in Jesus so much? And he was like, well, he was born of a virgin. He walked on water. He cured the sick. He rose the dead. He got the blind to see. He was God's son, you know. And then after he died, he rose. And to me, it sounded like the only reason my dad believed in Jesus had nothing to do with Jesus' teachings, and had everything to do with like superpowers. That wasn't good enough for me, because I'm not God's son in that kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't have any superpowers. So I appreciate that Jesus got to do all those things or whatever, but it doesn't change like the struggle that I feel on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like if he had given you examples of like things that happened in his life that told him that Jesus were real, like that would be more evidence to you.
Definitely. Yeah. For me, like superpowers, like
but he was just spouting off all these things that you had already read about.
Yep. And you know, his parents, his grandparents, his great grandparents, they were all Christian. So like, we're Christian. That's what we do. Yeah. And for me, like that's not enough. You know, and sometimes I wish it was enough. I wish that like you could just tell it to me and I could take it.
Yeah.
Because it seems like life would be a little bit easier if I could just do that.
Got to question
everything. I have to understand it.
Yeah.
It has to like make sense to me. And so that means I need to experience it as much as I can, you know, and to really understand it. And so for me, finding out more about esoteric Christianity or things like that.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Can you explain a little bit more what that is? I looked it up, but I couldn't really get a really good definition on it.
It's not super popular. Esoteric strictly means like hidden teachings. Exoteric are the public teachings.
Okay.
So sometimes the idea that you'll run into is there's the exoteric versions of religions. That's what everybody can take. Everybody can get it. But until you're at a certain point in your search, then it would not be advantageous for you to know about these things. Just like how people treat like children. They say like it's not good for kids to watch porn because it'll confuse them. You know, you need some kind of, it's probably confusing for everybody, but you know, you need some kind of context to go with it before you can see super violent things as a child. You know, you try to shelter them from things in that kind of way.
To I guess maybe make an example out of it with Christianity, I used to be heavily involved in the Baptist church growing up, and I can remember other people of my age, and I'll go ahead and shout out Patrick Mims if he ever listens to this, but you know, I would start to hear them talk about like the Holy Trinity and like the intricacies of that and all of the difficult things to grasp about that. And it, like you say, I wasn't as involved in the learning about Christianity as they were at that point in life, and so they would start to talk about those things, and I would just like have to back off and back away because it's like, all right, I can't, like you say, I can't grasp this. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to think about it, period. So I'm just going to remove myself from the situation and walk away. I guess, is that kind of what you're talking about?
And so you have to, this is not to make it sound like I am better than people or I've got anything figured out. Like I said, I think it'd be a lot easier if I didn't have these nagging questions all the time. Like it's almost annoying that I just can't accept what you're telling me. I've got to like touch it. I've got to see it. You know, one of my favorite stories from the Bible is like Thomas after Jesus is resurrected, and Thomas is like, "Is that you?" You know, and I'm paraphrasing here. "Is that you?" And Jesus is like, "Come touch." And you know, everybody talks about doubting Thomas. Don't be a doubting Thomas or whatever. But Thomas actually he was the only one who got to touch the body of the risen Christ because that's what he needed or whatever. Yeah. I'm not anywhere like close to that. I'm just saying that like, I can understand Thomas's sentiment, you know, like you're going to have to do more than just like show up.
Right.
Like you gotta be ready for some questions. And sometimes I'm notorious for like, I will ask people very uncomfortable questions because, I really try to like face those things in myself.
Yeah.
And that means, you know, sometimes you got to, like, get uncomfortable about things and maybe talk about some stuff that's, like, weird or not the norm. And it's not always best to, like, just go around, like, wearing a T-shirt talking about it.
Yeah.
You need to be in the right atmosphere. You need to be with the right people. And so in the same ways, like, you know, you can get into different aspects of Christianity where you're talking more about like the Trinity and what is that and everything, but you can't start there, you know. And you need to come there from like a place of genuine interest and curiosity, as opposed to just like, oh, I want to learn the cool shit, you know. Like I studied a lot of occult stuff because it was occult, which means like hidden, and I was like, oh, I got to read that, you know, I got to learn about that. I think Lauren's here. Yeah. So I did all that and got interested in those kind of things. And I just think that Christianity has this richness to it that unfortunately most people never really like dig into. Yeah. And a lot of people who want to dig into that richness of like mysticism and consciousness, they end up going to the East because it's a lot easier to get access to. And it's a lot, because in the East, they're not so like, they don't hide it as much. They're much more open about it.
You're surrounded by it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
like
much
the
more
church camp effect.
Yeah. It's much more part of like the culture. And
right.
So, for various reasons, it has been, it's just not as popular here. And so you have to really like go digging for it. So like, you know, reading like the Gnostic Gospels and, reading about like panentheism and, different ideas of like, what is God, and, getting into that kind of stuff will start to kind of take you down little rabbit holes, and, you know, you can go down little rabbit holes and find all kinds of interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I guess, where do you stand now? Are you still exploring and you still like to pursue those hidden things? And
I do. You know, for me, I would say, I got baptized. If I had to claim a religion, it would be Christianity. But it's a very broad version of it. It's a very open version of it. Yeah. And for me, it's more important to like experience reality and experience life as it really is, without trying to force things to be a certain way or project onto things a certain like belief system. I don't even think it all has to like fit into a little belief system. If anything, to me, that's like one of the cool things about life is that you won't ever figure it all out.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
not supposed to figure it all out.
For sure.
So I like that. You know, Terrence McKenna said, the universe isn't stranger than we suppose. It's stranger than we can suppose. And so I think, you know, if people take the time and really just whatever answers your questions, go with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have any questions, that's cool too. Like there's not like oh, you need to have questions about this,
right,
or whatever. Like I said, I think it would be easier if I didn't have so many damn questions about stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I can definitely get behind that. I feel the same way a lot of the times. Well, cool. I appreciate you being super open about that. That was awesome.
Yeah, I love talking about that stuff.
I guess we'll kind of start to wrap it up here. What are kind of some of your future goals, future plans with massage and bees and everything?
Yeah, so we've kind of scaled back on the beekeeping. We're doing, we added flowers to the mix. My wife is fantastic with plants, and flowers kind of go with bees. She's in the other room. She's looking at me. So
shouts out to Lauren. Randomly met her at what was that? It was a convention in Denver.
Oh, you met her at that?
We shared some wonderful Little Man ice cream with Morgan Potts and Shelby Dodson.
So anyways, we got the flowers. We're still in the Whole Foods in Louisiana. We have website JenningsApiaries.com. It's very like bare bones right now. You can email me or text me or anything.
Instagram.
Yep. And then the bodywork side, I'm actually putting more energy into right now. So I just got back from a training in Nashville doing neurokinetic therapy, which is a way of discovering dysfunctional movement patterns and helping people correct them. So helping people, like, you know, a lot of times people are actually not using the muscles properly in their body from like injuries or from different situations. And so this is kind of working with the motor control cortex to reprogram like movement patterns. And
is that through exercise or through machines?
Well, it's through exercise. It's all through. So it's through some body work. We do some. We have like a process that we go through, and then we do some body work, and then I usually have some corrective like exercises, homework that you have to do to kind of reprogram things. And then this weekend we're going to Austin to do anatomy training, which. Anatomy trains is like a model of looking at the body that takes into consideration how different parts are connected. And so sometimes like a problem in your foot is causing your neck to hurt. And so it's looking at different ways of that and how you assess those and then how you do body work to help correct it.
So you this just popped in my head now, but you've used the term body work.
Yeah.
And obviously you talked about Thai massage and things like that. So I guess you use the term body work because you don't like pursue one particular avenue. Like you do like trigger point and like some, do you do any like chiropractic stuff or you
don't do any chiropractic
stuff? I mean, I realize that's kind of a dumb question, but
no. So I use bodywork as kind of a catch-all for different things. So that's like stretching, that's giving exercises, that's doing hands-on, like what people probably think of as massage. When people hear massage, a lot of times they think of relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not. I will do like relaxation work if that's what you need and everything. But I guess like to me, it's like a limiting term, and so body work tends to be like a much more broad term to where we can include all kinds of other stuff. Into it.
Yeah, that makes much more sense.
Yeah,
I mean that makes me happy to hear that like you are not just like giving old women massages because they're rich and they can afford it. Like you're like legitimately. That happens
sometimes.
I'm sure it does, but I mean, like you're trying to use what you know to help people and make them better. And
I mean, I really, to me, it's super cool because I've seen it with my own body and done things with my own body. It's really cool to find something that's dysfunctional and then to help people find ways of correcting that.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't look at it as like I fixed you. It's like together we kind of found some stuff, and then you have to do some work afterwards too. It's not just like you come in, I fix you, you're done.
Yep.
There's like it's a active process.
Yep. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I feel like that's becoming a more of a popular thing as opposed to just going to the doctor and getting an MRI and doing surgery and stuff like that. And I don't know. We can get into stem cells if you really want.
Yeah, whatever, man. It's like stem cells. I know some people who do stem cell like therapy.
Yeah. Then that's kind of what I'm referring to is like, you know, trying to bring back ligaments and joints and stuff like that.
Yep.
Is that something you had experience with? Or?
Well, I've known people who have been like clients of mine, and then I've seen like patients in physical therapy clinics that I've worked in. I've seen them with differing, you know, results. I think when it comes to stem cells, like one of the big things is, it's not the end all be all. You know, they could do some crazy stuff with it. And this is 2019. By, you know, 2029, it's going to be even crazier.
Right.
And I don't know. Maybe we'll all be robots by the time I'm 80. But it's a therapy, and for some people it takes better than for other people. And so you just have to do a lot of research. There's no like magic fix, you know, and doctors don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, and like nobody has all the answers. If they tell you they do, they are definitely lying.
Yeah.
As far as like the ethics behind stem cells and everything, you know, you talked about Joe Rogan earlier. I don't know if you saw that Alex Jones, whenever he talked to Alex Jones and they got into stem cells and they were talking about all that stuff. And I mean, so you got people that like, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of look at it like, if they're taking stem cells from like aborted fetuses or whatever.
Right.
To me, it would be wrong if you aborted the fetus to take the stem cells. If the fetus is already aborted, you might as well take the stem cells. Just like whenever I die, if you can use any parts of this, have at it.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
I can support that.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, abortion is like its own kind of issue.
Right.
To me, whenever people hear stem cell, though, they start thinking like, you know, they're aborted fetuses, and like how that's how they're making them, which is how they do make some, but they have others that they're pulling stem cells out of like bone marrow and like out of yourself and all kinds of things like that. So it's like, you know,
I don't think it's has as bad as a rap as it used to. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's especially obviously there's more uses for it and that type of deal now. So
yeah. But I've seen people have like good results with it, and then I've seen people that didn't get much result from it at all. And so it's like everything else, you know, you just
what works for you might not work for me.
Yeah, and I think like our bodies are amazing, and you can heal a lot of things if you go through the right ways, and our bodies have the potential to do a lot of things that I don't think people have even come close to like tapping into on a big scale.
Are you familiar with David Goggins?
Yeah.
So I just listened to his audiobook,
and
it will absolutely get you so fired up to do whatever you want to, and he's got a pretty wild story just about, you know, pushing your body and realizing the potential of what you can do and stuff. But I guess something else that I thought about or have seen recently is like, you know, and experienced with getting back into working out and stuff is like little like twinges and stuff. Like it's not as bad as like it may seem at certain times.
Right.
Like I go on a run, and like I've been running for the past 6 or 8 weeks, and sometimes I get out on a run, and within the first mile, like my ankle will hurt, my calf will hurt or whatever, and like you just keep going, and it's like it all works out.
Yeah.
It may hurt the next day, but it doesn't hurt in the middle of the run. So
do you food journal?
I do not.
Oh man, you should food journal, and then also keep up with like, oh man, today I ran and my shit was hurting or whatever. What did I eat yesterday, last night, this morning, just to see if there's any correlation.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest downfalls that I have in my own life is my diet. I am 5'8", 150 pounds, and I eat a whole Johnny's pizza on Sunday.
Yeah.
And like I just have the metabolism of a 12-year-old.
Yep.
And running multiple miles a week on top of that is continuing to aid to that. But that that's always been my crutch, whatever. And the fact that I don't get fat eating what I eat is like not. But I understand that many things that I've listened to and things that I know how to take care of my body as far as diets. It's like I can stay on it for a couple days in a row, and then it's just like, let's go to Chick-fil-A and get a couple of chicken sandwiches. And
well, it's hard too. Like if you don't see negative consequences, it can be difficult.
But I've had that challenge to me before. Like change your diet for 2 weeks and tell me how you feel. Like, don't eat that fast food, whatever, for 2 weeks, and then tell me how you feel. And I also like work. I get my meal provided for me, and it's generally fast food, so that's a big problem that I have as well. Yep. But enough about me.
It's all challenges, but I would also say, like, so how about your family? Like, is everybody in your family just like lean?
No.
Everybody stays lean?
No, not really.
Then I would say chances are, give it a few more years and the metabolism
for sure
won't be 12 anymore.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. That's why I'm running.
Yeah.
trying to fight off all that, I guess. Well, cool. I've really enjoyed this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody go check out Jennings Apiaries on
and Jennings Bodywork.
And Jennings Bodyworks. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Cool.
So
awesome. Thanks.
Maybe we'll catch up with you down the road sometime.
Cool.
Peace.